Carrie Doherty, and I'm at the Mom's Choice Awards Filming Studio at Book Expo America 2012. And I'm here this afternoon with multi-award winning author Jason Edwards, who has created Will Allen. His first book, Will Allen and the Great Monster Detective, won an award, followed by Will Allen and the Ring of Terror, also an award winner. And we'll talk a little bit about his upcoming book, Will Allen and the Hideous Shroud.
Soon to be an award. Soon to be award winner, hopefully. Yes.
Yeah.
Hideous Shroud, yes. More complex words. As we progress through the series, the books get longer and progressively more challenging in their reading level to help kids start building more advanced reading skills.
Well, talking about your goal, clearly that's a goal to have more advanced reading skills. What was the inspiration? How did you get started?
Well, my real goal was to help children deal with anxieties. You see, I was inspired to write these books by a toilet.
Really?
Yeah, maybe I should explain.
That was a ringer.
Yeah, you set me up for that. You see, when my oldest daughter was very young, she was terrified by a loud automatic flushing toilet.
I have a daughter like that.
You know, they all have them. That's what I found. This toilet, she sat on it and flushed while she was sitting there, and the loud noise freaked her out, and she was traumatized. And we didn't think much of it, you know, but these fears, they take on a life of their own, and they grow. Now, my wife and I, being the good parents we are, we send her to a psychiatrist. But, none of the people we sent her to a psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, counselor. We couldn't find anyone who could help, so I invented someone. I invented the Great Monster Detective. Someone who could see this the way she saw it and help her confront it.
Did she become, in the sense that you're helping her, is she Will Allen? Is she one of the characters that he helps? How does that come about?
Will Allen actually was a character I created for stories I made years ago, and I simply put him into this situation. But Will Allen is a representation for her in this story, yes. A person who has a fear that literally takes on a life of its own and grows. And as we all know, if you don't learn how to cope with these fears at an early age, they can take over your life.
Absolutely.
And that's true for adults as well as children.
Well, now within each book, is there one specific fear or anxiety that you're working with, or are you working just sort of navigating a series of them?
Yes. Well, as we progress through the series, the issues that the children face grow progressively more complex and challenging, because that's what happens in life as children age. So at first it's dealing with some very simple and basic fears, but the underlying fear that triggers these things, in this case the hidden beast, is a much more complex fear, because again, as the kids grow older, they're dealing with much more complex fears and other types of issues, and they deal with those. For instance, in the second book, they're dealing with the issue of dealing with divorcing parents. The third book is about bullying, again, as the underlying themes.
Right.
But again, these are all confronted in the context of these fears and issues are manifesting themselves as monsters.
I'm sure you've had plenty of opportunities to share the books with kids, and
yes.
With something like a topic related to anxieties, what have the reactions been when you chat with the kids, and what have you learned from the kids in sharing your books?
Well, what I found is that, for the kids, thankfully, I don't want to make a preachy book. Johnny has a fear. How is Johnny going to deal with his fear? For the kids, it's just a funny fantasy mystery story.
Okay.
But one of the most gratifying moments I had was when a kid wrote me a letter and said, "This really helped me deal with my anxieties." Although the kid didn't say anxieties, because that's a grown-up word.
That's a grown-up word.
But, and I said, wow, that's what I set out to do. It's so thrilling to have the ability to do something positive. That's why I wanted to be part of the Mom's Choice Awards program, because I didn't want to just write a story. I love writing stories. I always loved stories, but I wasn't inspired to actually become an author until I had something I said, this is something I really should share with people. This is something I can do something positive for people. And when I got that kind of feedback from some kids, it was really the most important moment for me.
Now, have the kids given you some ideas on anxieties or fears, since that would be their word, fears that they want you to tackle, or they want Will Allen to tackle?
All the time. And many of them do end up in the books. I've written 8 of them. Where the third one is in the process of getting to the point of being published. But usually in some small way, because each of the books there are several monsters. Because monsters, like fears themselves, hide. You know, they mask themselves. They hide behind other fears. If I could show you again,
Sure, absolutely.
My favorite monster, the one who inspired it all, the great and terrible toilet monster.
Oh my goodness.
Yes,
He's pretty ferocious looking.
But I always get a laugh when I show people the toilet monster. But he's overcome and reduced fairly early in the book. You know, because there are several monsters, because we all have there are those archetype monsters,
Right.
you know, the scary tree or the storm or sharks or something like that. That was mine. You know, but there are deeper, more difficult, more complex fears to confront. And those kind of fears usually hide behind those simple things that are easy to identify and easy to challenge.
Now, who are the audiences? Like, if you're going into a school or you're going into a library, you're obviously not doing the preschool story time, but
Right.
who is the ideal audience that appreciates the story?
Well, this book was initially written for my daughter when she was young, so I wrote it for her age group. The first one is an early chapter book, and as I said, they get progressively more challenging as we go through the series. But it's basically intended for like 7 to 13-year-olds. So creating a program for 7 to 13-year-olds, because I wanted to go through schools and libraries, I can't just go and say, here's my book, see, Johnny, run, Johnny, run. I wanted to create something that the kids would love, and that the librarians and teachers would love. So I said, what do librarians want? They want kids to learn, especially they want to learn library skills. And what do kids want? They want an adventure. So I created a monster hunt, where the kids track down and capture a monster that's loose in the library.
Uh-oh.
But in order to do this, they have to deal with something even scarier than monsters.
The card catalog?
Exactly. They have to deal
You're
with
kidding!
educational stuff. But the card catalog is on computer now.
I know.
They have to learn how to find books of all different kinds all over the library, because that's why I've hidden clue cards with the clues leading them to the monster. So I guide them through the process of using the library catalog. What's this funny numbers? That's the Dewey Decimal System. How to use that to find books in the nonfiction section, how to find books in the fiction section. So the kids learn how to find books all by themselves all over the library. And I make sure, because again, I want to make sure this is good for all kids, every kid has their own sets of clues to track down. So there's never any competing over clues. There's never any, I didn't get what he got more. You know, everyone always succeeds.
That's excellent.
And they all learn this. So again, and it's been great. I've done this at over 100 schools and libraries now. And I know I'm supposed to say stuff like this, but everybody always loves it. So, and then in turn, I said, oh, and by the way, you know, we've got a book, which, you know, I don't want it to become, originally it was a marketing tool, but I don't want it to be that anymore, because the programs themselves have such value that I want that to be why the kids came to the library.
That's very cool. That's very
It
cool.
is.
I think you need a monster hunt here at BEA.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we got more than a few monsters to catch. And like I said, we've all got them. You know, it's like,
Yep.
I went to get on the plane to come here, I was like, get off the plane! You know, it's like we all have these fears that take on a life of their own. And if we don't learn how to cope with them, the richness of our lives gets diminished. You know, so many, I can't go here, I can't do that. And I wanted the world to be open for my daughters, so all of this richness, so that was what inspired me, and for all kids to be able to do this, to share this with them.
That is great. Well, congratulations again.
Thank
I'm so
you for
glad
making
you
it
could join
possible
us
for me to be
at
here.
Book Expo this year.